Welcome to This Week in Aviation, brought to you by AviatorDB. I'm Mark Preston. An overheated circuit board at Potomac TRACON triggers ground stops across 5 Washington area airports, the second smell-related outage there in 2 weeks. A string of fatal general aviation accidents on 3 continents, including 2 skydiving tragedies that together claimed more than 20 lives. A mid-air helicopter collision over Rio de Janeiro, with conflicting death tolls and a formal Brazilian investigation now underway. And a global systems outage at Boeing halts inspections and delivery paperwork on the final day of the quarter. Here are this week's stories. We begin in the National Capital Region. Ground stops rippled across the Washington region this week after an equipment failure at Potomac TRACON, the facility that manages approach and departure traffic for the capital's busy airspace. The cause was an overheated circuit board. That single failure was enough to trigger ground stops at 5 airports at once: Reagan National, Dulles, Baltimore, Washington, Charlottesville, and Richmond. When one control facility handles arrivals and departures for multiple airports, a problem inside that building doesn't stay contained. It cascades outward across the entire region. What makes this notable is that it was the second smell-related disruption at Potomac TRACON in 2 weeks. 2 events in quick succession at the same facility raise a broader question about the resilience of the infrastructure managing some of the most sensitive airspace in the country. The equipment failure did not occur in isolation. National celebrations around the July 4th holiday brought additional temporary flight restrictions at Reagan National, layering planned airspace closures on top of an unplanned facility outage. The result? 2 separate sets of constraints hitting the same airspace at the same time, one from failed hardware, one from security-driven restrictions. For passengers, the effect is delays and holding, rebookings and missed connections, all stemming from a facility most travelers will never see. For the FAA, back-to-back trouble at a single TRACON invites scrutiny of aging equipment and how quickly a lone component can shut down departures across an entire metropolitan area. There is no indication the 2 smell-related events are formally linked at this stage. That remains an open question. Now to a difficult week for aviation safety. This was one of the deadliest weeks for general aviation in recent memory, with investigators across 4 continents opening or advancing probes into a series of fatal accidents. The most serious involved skydiving operations. Near Butler, Missouri, a skydive aircraft crashed, killing 12. NTSB preliminary findings indicate the aircraft was within its weight limits, and the engine was producing power at the moment of impact. Details that, for now, steer the inquiry away from the most obvious mechanical explanations and leave the cause open. In France, near Nancy, a Pilatus PC-6 operating a skydiving flight crashed, killing all 11 aboard. It is the deadliest skydiving plane accident in decades. Beyond those 2 tragedies, the week brought a cluster of smaller, fatal crashes. A Cessna 177RG went down in Tennessee. A Cessna 421 crashed in France. A Piper Comanche crashed in Ohio. A float-equipped Cessna 195 struck power lines and crashed into the Columbia River near Pasco, Washington. A Buffalo Airways aircraft crashed near Fort Simpson while working a wildfire. A Piper PA-28 crashed in South Africa, and a Cessna A-152 went down near Northweald in England. These cases are spread across the NTSB, Canada's TSB, France's BEA, Britain's AAIB, and local authorities. Many remain in the earliest investigative stages. The pattern investigators will weigh is low-altitude flying, skydiving runs, utility missions, wildfire work, and wire strikes, where margins are thin and terrain unforgiving. Separating mechanical failure from pilot decision-making and operating environment takes months. For now, the findings are preliminary, and no single cause connects them. From that safety cluster to a collision over a major city. Brazilian authorities are investigating a mid-air collision between 2 helicopters over Rio de Janeiro, an accident that ended with one aircraft crashing into a car dealership and igniting a large fire. The collision occurred on June 14th over Recreio dos Bandeirantes, on the city's west side. One helicopter came down into an electric vehicle dealership, and the impact set off a substantial blaze on the ground. The death toll remains unresolved. One account puts the number killed at 6. Another reports 9 fatalities. That kind of discrepancy is not unusual in the hours and days after a complex urban accident, when victims on the aircraft and any casualties on the ground are still being confirmed. But it underscores that basic facts in this case are not yet settled. Brazil's Aviation Accident Investigation Authority, SINIPA, together with the Brazilian Air Force, has opened a formal probe. Investigators will examine the flight paths of both helicopters, how the 2 aircraft came to occupy the same airspace, and the density of helicopter traffic over Rio, a city where rotorcraft are a common means of moving above congested streets. A mid-air collision over a densely populated urban area is rare, and it raises immediate questions about airspace management and separation for low-flying helicopter traffic. Depending on what investigators find, the accident could prompt scrutiny of how tour, transport, and utility helicopter operations are coordinated over the city. For now, the confirmed death toll, the cause of the collision, and any regulatory response all remain pending as the investigation proceeds. To the manufacturing side of the industry, and a disruption at Boeing. Boeing was hit by a global systems outage on June 30th that interrupted work at multiple U.S. sites, and it landed on the most sensitive possible day, the final day of the quarter. The outage halted final inspections and delivery paperwork, the last steps before an aircraft is handed to a customer. Boeing said it had no reason to believe the disruption was a cyber attack. The timing is what makes this significant. Deliveries are the moment Boeing recognizes much of the payment on an aircraft, and the count is tallied at each quarter's close. An outage that freezes inspection and delivery documentation on June 30th risks pushing completed handovers into the next reporting period, affecting the quarter's delivery numbers even when the airplanes themselves are ready. The episode is a reminder of how dependent modern aerospace manufacturing has become on its digital backbone. Final inspections and delivery records now run through networked systems. When those systems go down, physically finished aircraft can still be stranded on paperwork alone. Boeing's statement that it sees no reason to believe this was a cyber attack reflects current evidence rather than a final conclusion. It does not rule out external interference outright. It describes what the company knows so far. The distinction matters, and it is one investigators inside the company will be working to close. For a manufacturer whose production discipline and delivery cadence are watched closely by airlines, investors, and regulators alike, an outage of this kind is more than an IT inconvenience. It touches the credibility of Boeing's ability to move aircraft out the door on schedule, and it arrived at the least forgiving moment on the calendar. Also in aviation news this week, the FAA has proposed lifting the decades-old ban on overland supersonic flight. The rule, in place since 1973, would be replaced with performance-based noise limits, shifting the standard from a fixed speed prohibition to a measurable sound threshold. The move follows congressional action, including the House-passed SAM Act, which supports the new framework. The proposal reopens a market that has been effectively closed for a half-century, and it could shape how the next generation of civil supersonic aircraft is designed and certified in the United States. The FAA is also investigating a reported drone strike near New York's Kennedy Airport. On June 29th, the crew of JetBlue Flight 948 and A321 on final approach reported a possible drone impact. A post-flight inspection found no damage to the aircraft. The report adds to ongoing concern about unmanned aircraft operating near major airports, though in this case, there were no injuries and no confirmed physical damage. Investigators will work to determine whether an actual strike occurred. An Air Canada Express flight operated by PAL Airlines diverted to Boston Logan after the captain of its de Havilland Q400 suffered a medical emergency. The first officer landed safely with 61 aboard. No injuries were reported. The cases highlight the crew resource management procedures that allow a single pilot to complete a flight when the other becomes unable to continue, and Lufthansa is pressing ahead with a long-term fleet overhaul, adding A350s and 777X aircraft while retiring older wide bodies and withdrawing its CityLine unit. The strategy points toward a more efficient, modern fleet, though the timeline depends in part on the delayed 777X program. Separately, earlier in the week, a series of overweight landings by Lufthansa 747 aircraft at Frankfurt drew scrutiny, adding attention to an airline already in the middle of a significant transition. That's This Week in Aviation. For the latest aviation news, visit aviatordb.com. I'm Mark Preston. We'll see you next week.